to the very important debate about the electrification of the Great Western Line, and I invite Charlotte Leslie to move the motion.
Thank you. I beg to move that this House has considered electrification of the Great Western Line. Mr. Hollowbone, it is a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. This is a debate I never wanted to have to bring to the House, and I'm sure one that many members here didn't want to have brought to the House. And in doing so, I do acknowledge that the Minister is relatively new to his post, and that many of the problems I'm highlighting will be ones he's inherited. I also acknowledge that he has been and is a formidable constituency MP, as well as now a great minister. So I hope he will forgive us, many of us, for speaking quite passionately for the views and interests of our constituents. And this goes to the heart of why I'm calling this debate, because I'm sure there are those somewhere who will say, what is an MP for Bristol North West doing having this debate? Neither Bristol Parkway nor Bristol Temple Meads are in my constituency. Some will say, well, she's not affected by this. For anyone who says an MP like me isn't affected like this is to misunderstand fundamentally the nature of transport, and our railways in particular. Our railways aren't only stretches of iron rail on the location in which they're constituted. They are the circulation system, if you will, of our regions, our communities, and indeed our entire nation. And if something happens to one part of that circulation system, it has wide-reaching effects and impacts on the body as a whole. I'm calling this debate because of deep concern over the recent government announcement over electrification deferral, and that it yet again appears to leave the South West region trailing behind other areas of the country in terms of transport infrastructure investment. Is that a request to give way? I'd be delighted to.
Adjusting his hair.
I'm most grateful not anything away. I'm sorry to interrupt her so very early in her speech. I know that most of the speeches in the Chamber this afternoon will be about the problems and the deferral of electrification. But would it not also be gracious to say that 10 years ago there was no prospect whatsoever of electrification anywhere to the west of London, and we should actually be glad that in fact this Conservative government has delivered electrification as far as Chippenham, my constituency, or just outside it, and that actually we've got quite a few things to be grateful for, albeit also a few problems.
It is always a profound joy to give way to the honourable member. If he had perhaps waited a small amount of time before intervening, I would have come to that. But since he has made that case, I can skip over some of that in my speech because it is a very valid point. And we do not want to let the best become the enemy of the good. And I will go on to say that I want to acknowledge where we actually are. I will do.
Disputes the honourable member's maths, but actually, given that the decision to electrify the railway was made in 2009, which is less than 10 years away, I beg to differ with what has just been said.
My friend also anticipates something that I'm going to be raising in my speech is whichever government wants to make dramatic railway infrastructure improvements faces challenges. It may be a Labour minister or Conservative minister sitting in the position here, but I suspect that the challenges in delivering what they want to do could be very similar, and I will be coming to that in my speech. However, for South West MPs, I think we might all agree, I'm afraid, that when we see HS2 bills soaring to 42 billion, deferring our meagre, by comparison, 5 billion project is particularly hard to swallow, especially since the South West has historically consistently been amongst the bottom regions in the league tables for regional spend per capita. This is a region that boasts exciting opportunities, is incredibly fast-growing, and desperately needs the kind of focus on rail investment that we've seen in HS2 and Crossrail. And so, forgive me, Minister, if I say for the South West, in terms of seeing real, actual infrastructure, not promised but built, many here feel it is now our turn. But coming to the point that my honourable friend raised, there are improvements, and the government is making efforts, and I must be fair about the context of this debate. I do recognise that this deferral notwithstanding, the region will still be receiving, which it might otherwise have not, 5,000 extra seats on journeys into London at peak time. Most of us have made that journey. We know that's welcome. We know we're getting new trains promised, which will deliver faster journeys. We're told there are station improvements down the line. I hope the Minister will forgive me for being honest and saying that given the recent announcement of deferral we've seen, we'll believe these things when we see it. I'd also appreciate in his response a bit more clarity about exactly what tangible benefits we will be getting in return for what has been a very hard blow in the announcement of this deferral. But as I said, these improvements are welcome, and I don't want to be ungracious in denying that. However, very major concerns remain, both in terms of what this decision says about the way in which we do big infrastructure projects in this country. But I will also raise specific concerns and questions to which, if he's not able to answer today, I would deeply appreciate a written response in detail. I'd be glad to.
Before she moves on to that point, just to pick up on her point earlier on about the South West not always being at the front of the queue for such things, would she agree with me that because Bristol is, I think, the fastest growing core city outside London and therefore has a huge economic benefit to bring to the country, doesn't it seem strange to her that other areas have been preferred on the list of electrification? I mean, this deferral also includes deferrals of some of the Thames Valley commuter lines and some of the lines to Oxford. Would it not be sensible now to re-examine the business case for electrification of some of the lines radiating out from Bristol on the basis that actually the economic case for Bristol's economic zone must make it more attractive and would go some way to addressing the relative low priority which Bristol and the South West has previously been afforded?
If Hansard could kindly ascribe the comments of my honourable friend to me, I would be very grateful, because that is exactly the point that I want to make. It does seem very strange. It does play to an historic view that the South West is always overlooked, and I don't understand why we seem to have been axed when other places still seem to be a political priority. It doesn't make sense on the economic arguments. I will gladly give way.
It's not just the South West that's been axed on the GWR electrification. I had hoped to be able to contribute to the earlier debate here about air quality around Heathrow. One of the things which will be very damaging to air quality around Heathrow is the fact that the Windsor-Slough link will stay a diesel link and not be electrified, as was originally promised when people like me supported the original debate on the third runway at Heathrow, because we were promised electrification of our railway.
Thank you very much. I started this debate by saying that what happens in one area of the country affects another, and then I go on to make an unapologetically biased case. Well, it's not biased, but strong case for the South West. But I do hear exactly what the Honourable Lady is saying. Something happening in one region has deep effects in the other. But I would still continue to make a special case for the South West, and the way I think it hasn't had its merits duly looked at by the Department historically. I will give way, and then I'll make some progress.
I thank the Honourable Lady for giving way. Would you agree with me that one of the examples we've got of how the South West does not benefit from investment is that at the moment it's impossible to get a train from Plymouth, Exeter to Bristol along the very great Western network we rely on?
Thank you very much. I think anyone who's travelled that route will echo with gusto what my honourable friend has just said. But just moving on to concerns on a macro level, the NAO's report into the functioning of Network Rail and the Department's ability to project manage and hold Network Rail to account, I have to say I find deeply concerning. Now, I don't doubt the good intentions of all involved, but we read in the NAO report of over-optimism from Network Rail on significant elements of the electrification project, inadequate project management process, the list goes on. And the trouble is, it's become almost a matter of course over the years, and I have to say spanning various governments, to expect any rail project to go way over budget and way over time under Network Rail. And if Britain is to stand a chance of competing globally, this simply isn't good enough. And I have to add, from what I've seen, I don't think Network Rail is a particularly good advert for those who say that the state should be running more of our railways. For those that are still having this argument, the idea, I have to say, from Network Rail's performance fills me with absolute dread, and I'm not ideological on this point. I'd just like to see things work well. So it'd be very helpful for many of us, I think, if the Minister could outline what he sees as the main challenges in not just his, but any government delivering fit-for-purpose infrastructure projects under the systems we currently have. I'd be particularly interested to know what levers he, as a minister, as an elected representative, has for holding Network Rail, which is, as I understand it, a state function, to account. Secondly, I have to confess to being a little bit confused about the matter of principle on what we have heard about the deferral of electrification. I know the government is saying that customers needn't worry because we'll be getting bigger and faster bi-mode trains, delivering all the benefits of electrification but without the need for that expensive wire in the sky. But if everything is so awesome without electrification, why would we still be talking about electrification at all? If it was all so awesome, why wouldn't such improvements from bi-mode rolling stock for a fraction of the cost make electrification actually a redundant technology? And if it isn't a redundant technology, won't it only cost more in the long term to do it later, not sooner? And I do feel we need more clarity on what the government's view of the merits of electrification actually now are. But coming to more specific concerns, have there been wasted works? It seems that significant investment has already been made on preparatory work for electrification that has now been deferred. Can the Minister give a figure of how much this has cost? And can he provide a cast-iron guarantee that this is now not money wasted? I understand that Network Rail has suggested that the work to Bristol Temple Meads may now be completed by control period 6. Could he give any clarification as to when, during CP6, this might be? Now there's been a deferral of what was much vaunted electrification. Questions are inevitably being asked about the other elements of the modernisation programme. The deferral announcement has dented confidence, and we really do need that confidence rebuilt. Can you give us an assurance that the other core elements will be completed, like the Filton Bank Capacity Enhancement Project, the new Hitachi hybrid IEP trains, and the 2 new services per hour between Bristol Temple Meads and London Paddington that this will now these trains will enable?
Give way at that point.
I will give way.
Can I congratulate my honourable friend on securing this debate on the Great Western electrification? And as a Welsh MP, I think the only Welsh MP, I add my weight to the South West being underrepresented with infrastructure, but also Wales, and the lack of confidence. Can I ask the Minister in his concluding remarks to outline the timetable for the mainline electrification and reassure us that the timeline on that won't slip, because confidence has been knocked?
That's an extremely good point to raise. Thank you very much for raising it. Finally, and before I know many other members would like a chance to speak, I have a concern over rolling stock, and this is a concern that has been raised locally, is the effect of the deferral of the electrification of the Thames Valley branches on the planned cascade of the Thames Turbo Class 1656 rolling stock to the west of England. These are absolutely vital to Metro West Phases 1 and 2 projects. I have been in the past very public about what seems to me and many others in the region as an appallingly missed opportunity from local decision makers in failing to prioritise a Henbury Loop line in the Metro West scheme. I've been clear that I don't think these schemes are ambitious enough to meet the exponentially growing branch line demand in our region. However, they are a start. If the Metro West scheme, as it is to be even further detrimented, it would be simply catastrophic for our city and our region, and I can't impress that upon the Minister enough. Can the Minister today give assurances that the rolling stock cascade of the Thames Turbo Class 1656 will not be affected by this deferral? And finally, just turning briefly to the Bristol East Junction and Temple Meads, which I know that the member for Bristol East will probably want to raise in more detail than me, and I've been pleased to be able to work in many ways cross-party on rail for our city. Can we get assurances over the concerns over the future of the remodelling of the Bristol East Junction and over plans for transforming Bristol Temple Meads to accommodate new trains at platform 0 and 1? I know that the Honourable Member will want to speak on that, but I would like some replies. This is an important debate for so many MPs and so many of their constituents. And in closing, please can I just say this? This is not what I fear it might be seen by some as people fussing over whether we have a wire in the sky or not. This is about the South West being sick of being the poor relation in our nation's transport projects while other high-speed projects go roaring on. This is about a real concern that is somehow the thin end of a wedge that will see all the progress we have made, and progress of which I've been so proud over the last 6 years, melt away. And this is all about all of us here, regardless of party, asking very serious questions about whether the mechanisms and bodies this or any government has at its disposal to plan and build rail infrastructure are any longer fit for purpose. Given what we have seen of projects soaring over budget, over time, then getting paused, deferred, or cancelled, or any other word you like to use, under an array of governments, it is hard to believe that Network Rail is fit for purpose. And if they are not, and assuming Britain wants to be a global competitor, could the Minister provide some thoughts on what on earth we are going to do about it?